So tomorrow, Star Wars Outlaws releases on the Switch 2, and Ubisoft was kind enough to send over a code early so I could take a look at it and capture some footage. Since I did mention I wanted to record it in 4K and show it off here so you could see what it ended up looking like, since there has been a lot of discussion around this game just functioning on Nintendo's new hybrid system, mostly because it was going to be the thing that would, I think, break the comparables between the Steam Deck and the Switch 2, as that is something that happens quite a bit. How does the Steam Deck measure up to the Switch 2 with certain games? Well, Star Wars Outlaws does not run well at all. I mean, barely on the Steam Deck. So if the Switch 2 could pull it off, I think that would be a pretty big separator here. And, well, to be honest, Ubisoft has they've turned in a pretty good effort here. I mean, this port is in some cases shocking. I think you're going to hear that from a lot of people today and over the next couple of days. Is this game surprised them? Okay, and that's what we're going to look at here today. Some of my thoughts around the latest port that we're seeing, the latest impossible port almost that we can see going to the Switch 2. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. Now, I am currently playing the version 1.0.3. It's the latest build as of recording for this footage. I'm not sure if another patch is coming here soon, as there have been discussions around a patch that might fix up some things that I'm going to bring up here. Just know this is the version I have that I can record heading into its release. All right, so we'll see if maybe something pops up to fix some of these aspects of the game. Anyway, quick thoughts on the game. I've already talked about this many times before. I think Star Wars Outlaws is a fairly average game, and it does fall into a lot of the tropes that Ubisoft tends to have in some of their open world games. And while this is more of an open zone game, it is still kind of that hidden checklist title where you go around and have different side quests or things to find in the world, and then you build up all of your upgrades and other things there, including, yes, plenty of cosmetics that you can collect. You play as Kay Vess, who's an outlaw trying to make it in the world out there. So with that said, it is running on the Snowdrop engine, and one of the reasons this is such an interesting release on the Switch 2 is because it does have ray tracing baked into the game. Like, it is a major element, a core pillar of this release. And look, visually speaking, there were some really impressive moments for this game when I was playing it on my PlayStation 5 when it had released. So I was interested to see how it would hold up here with the Switch 2. And the fun thing here is if you have your Ubisoft account linked to both systems, you can transfer your save data. Yeah, so I took my PS5 save data, transferred it over through the cloud with Ubisoft and my Kinect account to the Switch 2. So I was able to jump almost 18, 19 hours into the game right away on this system. So I had access to different planets and different quest lines and stuff that I could just kind of go through quickly early on, which actually helped out quite a bit here. So in order to do that, if you go to the save screen, there's one button you press and it's all listed at the bottom to upload your save. And then conversely, you can download your save with a single button press as well. So I actually like the idea of this just with Ubisoft in general. Let's say I wouldn't necessarily recommend buying Outlaws twice for two different systems. That's just me, but I guess if you're really into it and you want to play it portably on your Switch 2, and then when you come home and you have your really nice setup, 4K using more high-end PC hardware or on your PlayStation 5 Pro or something, you can transfer the save over and it all happens very quickly. So it's a nice benefit to have there to be able to utilize that. And I'm thinking more in the future when some big titles come out, say like an Assassin's Creed that releases day and date across the board. Yeah, maybe you invest, in both of them and you go back and forth there. Anyway, the initial load time when I started the game up, about 10 seconds, which isn't bad. It's not as fast as the other systems, but it's not slow and it's not really something that gets in the way. And then I fast traveled to a city here in the world, and that took about 13 seconds. Again, we're not dealing with really long load times like we've had in the past with, say, the Switch 1, where we go a minute plus in certain AAA titles. So it's still pretty speedy here. The game, we'll just get this out of the way, runs at 30 FPS. There's occasional, I'll say pretty infrequent drops during gameplay. I mean, I really had to do some stuff to notice stuttering or the game kind of pausing for a second to catch up. And a lot of that came down to speeding around while in gunfire and then jumping off of cliffs. So even in like bigger firefights with a bunch of enemies, it wasn't something that, say, got in the way if it would drop to 20 frames per second. None of that really occurred in my couple of hours of playtime here. Visually speaking, this isn't a blurry Vaseline effect like we've had with the previous generation, where you'd hear a big AAA title going to the Switch 1, and then you'd plug it in, docked, and it would look quite smeared on the screen. No, this is a fairly sharp image. However, I will say, I think the lighting adds a lot to this port, first of all. Okay, so when you look around in the world, you're going to see a lot of lighting effects and ray tracing built as a core pillar of this game. And this is a great showpiece here for what the Switch 2 is capable of in that department. But you'll see lighting come into play a lot with time of day changing and the light kind of peeking over different mountains and the valleys. And when you're going on quests or maybe going through like this small encampment that you found or something, it adds a lot, yes, to the game. And it's pretty cool to see the Switch 2 pull that off in docked and handheld play, which we'll get to later. I did record some handheld play off screen, and I tried to record some with the Switch 2 internal, so we'll see how all of that comes out. But what I think we're seeing here is a lower resolution that is being upscaled with DLSS to, say, 1440p or something, and then it's pushed the rest of the way to 4K for your TV. So I think there are a lot of tricks that are going on right now in the background for this image to look sharper, and it looks fairly sharp. There are some aspects of artifacting, especially around Kay's hair being a big one, or if you find any certain edges on light poles, stuff like that, and then you stop and really look, you'll see it. But when I'm just running through the world, or I'm doing quests, or I'm trying to meet objectives, or just speed around, it's not necessarily something you are going to notice as much. And that can, yes, be a downfall of DLSS and some of these different upscaling techniques from a lower resolution. That will be present, but I think when you're moving around the world well enough, it's not really going to be distracting. And I think that's the most exciting part right now about the Switch 2 with some of these big ports that come over, is they've seemed to have solved a lot of the docked issues that we'd run into with the last generation with a more blurry image, and now these things are holding up better. I will say that the frame rate seems to be something we're going to mostly come to terms with for the Switch 2, where you're probably dealing with a lot of 30 FPS games. And I think most people with the Switch 2 understand there are trade-offs when you're dealing with, well, a portable device that, handheld mode, pulling 10 watts, maybe a bit more than 20 watts when it's docked here. But it does turn in a pretty good experience all the way around, with the convenience being brought into play, especially when you compare it to something like, yes, the Steam Deck that was just a struggle fest all the way around. And I do like to see the Switch 2 handle something like ray tracing this well. And I think that's the surprising part for a lot of people, as we got word for certain impressions going into this release that it was running terribly, the frame rate was low, it was choppy all over the place, and it was really blurry. I'm just not really experiencing any of that here. I would say the most noticeable issue with the game that apparently might be solved with a patch coming up, can't guarantee it because I don't have it, but for at least now, the version 1.0.3 that I'm running on is the pop-in. So when I'm speeding around, say just on my speeder, going very, very fast, even at running at times that I noticed in portable mode, the grass or foliage will start to pop into play almost on that line that you see when you're running. It's just kind of coming into view. Or when you're speeding around, you'll see lot or level of detail pop in on mountains or textures that are just off into the distance. And it is enough to be distracting. It can be kind of blink and you'll miss it stuff, but because it pops in so quickly, it'll catch your attention. At least it did for me pretty consistently. Otherwise, though, in more foliage-rich areas, the game handled it pretty well when everything was loaded in. Still, though, the thing I was really curious about would be handheld play, as usual with a lot of these Switch 2 games, since that is the big sell, it able to be taken on the go. And this is where I think this game shines a bit more, and it's something that we're probably going to see for just a lot of Switch 2 games in general. They do seem to hold up pretty well in portable play. In fact, the thing that I complain about the most in portable play like this is the fact that the Joy-Con joysticks don't have great travel. So if it's a third person or first person shooter, it's a little harder to aim. That's really it. I mean, here's the thing. We're hiding a lot of stuff with this screen because you're just on a smaller here 8-inch 1080p display. It's not blown up to a 65-inch 4K screen. And it runs pretty smooth here in portable play. We know that Nintendo had put VRR and stuff into the screen, so that's something that can help a lot of these portable experiences. But even so, this being a game that is fairly large, I mean, it's not a small game. It does feel like it's a big Star Wars epic adventure that I think had a character that needs just a little bit more. And yes, I'm a simple person, If K-Vest became force sensitive and found a lightsaber and that was the second half of the game or something, hey, you know what? I might be a bit more interested. But here, this is a game that does feel like it's bordering on that impossible port for a system like this. And it's hard to say that we really see those anymore because we went through an entire generation with the Switch 1. And I almost feel like we've kind of watered down that saying now because it's like, well, yeah, most things should be able to run on this if the developers want it to. But I think when we start hearing about ray tracing coming into play on a device like this, it does legitimately surprise people that it's running like this. And you know what? It's a pretty good port, all things considered. The game itself, well, you can look into that a bit more and see what you think. Again, I wasn't as high on the game as maybe some other people were, but I also look at it now with a lot of the patches they've done since release, where they did try to sort out things that people were pointing out as big problems, mostly with the gameplay side, that some of the stealth elements, and they have worked to correct that. So I see this as mostly an average to decent Ubisoft game that does, again, fall into a lot of the tropes with the open world checklist style. But for the Switch 2 port, yeah, it's legitimately going to surprise people and catch them off guard with how well it turned out. Especially with the file size coming in now at 20 gigabytes, I think they were able to save some of that space with clearly lower resolution or lower quality textures. But also, some of the videos that I've noticed do have quite a bit of compression to where I noticed a lot of banding on my larger 65-inch 4K set specifically. Not as much in portable mode, but it is something that is at least present on the TV. And if that's really the big trade-off for file size, I actually don't really mind it as much because you can kind of get over that if the file size is coming in now at 20 gigabytes. But let me know what you guys think about this down below. Mostly just want to get you guys some footage, as I mentioned before, in 4K, so you can take a look for yourself and see what you think, and just give some of my quick thoughts around Star Wars Outlaws, which is releasing September 4th tomorrow. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.